So I'm starting. Thank you for coming. My name is Michael. I'm a student for USP, USP, and together with my professor Cesar, Alexandre Souza, we are studying factors influencing premium pricing in e-marketplaces. I start with an introduction and some context. What I'm calling e-marketplace is a website where buyers and sellers can meet together, negotiate, discuss, see products and discuss pricing, and maybe close a deal. A clear example would be eBay, for example, or even Amazon Marketplace. And IS literature usually approach this e-marketplace from two different branches of study. Some focus on establishing trust. How can two matters, two parts that don't know each other can trust each other and trust the system enough to make a deal online? Or differentiation, how can two sellers that are selling the same product at the same time in the same e-marketplace can work with different pricing? My study goes in the second branch of work, so I'm discussing how can two sellers working in the same marketplace can work with different pricing, and what factors do influence premium pricing generation in e-marketplaces. In this example, I have two listings of iPhones in Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre is a large eBay version, Latin American eBay version. Some people think it's Brazilian, but it's actually from Argentina. It's a huge website. And you see that two sellers are selling the exact same product. One is asking 300 reais more than the other, almost 300, 200 something. And both are selling at the same time and it's working. More precisely, this study will analyze what factors influence premium pricing in iPhone 6 16GB sales on Mercado Libre. The relevance of this study is because we couldn't find anything similar in Brazil. There are some international studies for how price is discussed in eBay, for example, or Taobao, or any other single website, but none of them were conducted focusing on Latin America, and especially in Brazil. We decided to use to focus this on Mercado Libre because Mercado Libre is the most visited website for e-commerce in Brazil, and there are thousands of people that live by selling goods on Mercado Libre. Another interesting contribution was the approach, the methodology, the way we conducted the data collection. We are collecting real data from Mercado Libre, but we don't have access to Mercado Libre inside information. So we are using public APIs to collect the listings and trying to generate a sales extract based on just on public available information. And this is part of a broader research. So we are present here in this paper covers specifically iPhone, but in the broader research we cover other items with different characteristics. So we started by reviewing the literature, seeing what is the academia researching regarding marketplace and pricing in marketplaces. And then we saw the main factors that other authors researched that could influence pricing. It's important to highlight that some, especially the early studies, like the first one, Paulo, 2002, focus more on the auction, because eBay in the beginning was very focused on auction. And Mercado Libre, and actually eBay nowadays, are mainly focused on buy it now deals. So it's really, you go ahead and click and you bought the item instead of constructing a pricing. But then we look at what were the factors that those authors considered, and then we conducted an empirical study with real data to validate the model. So basically my research model is that seller characteristics, websiting, and by website I mean the listing, the ad itself, and product characteristics influence premium pricing generation. For each of those factors, we established a hypothesis to validate. So regarding seller characteristics for reputation, we say that a good seller reputation has a positive influence on premium price generation. And the variables we use it to see if this is true is the negative feedback, so the percentage of feedbacks negative feedbacks. After a sale, the buyer can send a feedback about the seller, and we see the percentage of negative feedbacks. And also Mercado Libre has a thermometer that goes in 5 range of colors, from red to green. This is based on number of sales and percentage of feedbacks and the behavior of the seller and the platform. So we use both variables to see reputation. For size, we have the same, for all factors, we have this kind of the same structure for the hypothesis. And the size is, seller size has a positive influence on premium price generation. Mercado Libre has a seal called Mercado Libre. This is based on cash flow and revenue. So once a seller has a large revenue, he can send some documentation from Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre may approve it, and they receive a seal that I am Mercado Libre. That means I'm a big seller. So this is the main variable we will use to check the effect of size, and also the number of lifetime transactions. In location, sellers based on big cities work with different prices than sellers on smaller cities. For this, we look at the basic location for the seller. And going ahead to the listing characteristics, we see the use of multimedia resources, and by that is photos and videos, and services. For services, we look at their seller warranty. The seller can specify an extra warranty or the possible of refund an item and receive it back, and send the money back or something like this. And also if the seller sends an invoice, like nota fiscal, so it's a tax-related invoice. If the seller states this in the listing that I'm sending this item with an invoice, like nota fiscal. Nota fiscal is not exactly the same as invoice, but most of you people here are Brazilians, so they.
Like a receipt.
Yeah, it's like a receipt with financial taxes value. And then we see shipping and exposure. Shipping is basically if it's free shipping. Exposure, extra listing exposure has a positive influence on premium pricing generation. You can post an ad listing on Mercado Libre for free, or you can pay to have some extra exposure, like showing up first in the search results or those kind of things, and we see the effect of it. The last one for listing characteristics is the age of the listing. We see that the listing age has a positive influence on premium price generation. By age is the numbers of days since the creation of the listing. The seller may create a listing for just one item, so I'm selling one iPhone, or he can create a listing for 100 iPhones and use the same listing 100 of times. And he can also stop the listing and reactivate it later in the future. So some sellers adopted this strategy. And also we see the numbers of units sold. And finally, for product characteristics, we see the item condition, if it's a new item or if it's a used item. Usually the behavior is, we expect a different behavior for used and new items, because a new item is kind of homogenic. The buyer knows exactly what he's buying. But when he's buying a used item, he's a little more skeptical about how is the condition, what exactly I am buying for this listing. Then we go to data collection. So during 60 days, we collected data from Mercado Libre. We developed a script that every day during midnight, the beginning of the day, he would go ahead and search for this specific product and get all information he could about this listing. These include the number of sold units until that date, and all related data like the description, the pricing, how was the seller rating, the seller thermometer, negative feedback, all that stuff. Every day the script would run and get the information. And then by comparing one day with the previous day, we would see what changed from one day to the other to infer sales spread. So if we search for an item on day 1, and then we go ahead on day 2, and the item is not there anymore, we could, using the API from Mercado Libre, check what happened to that item. Was it sold, was it canceled? If it was sold, we bring it as a sold item for our sales strategy. If we see that, another example, like in day 1, we see that the listing had sold 5 units so far. On day 2, it had sold 6 units so far. So we can infer that in day 1, it sold 1 unit for that specific listing. So we first collected the data for 60 days, 56 days, and then we created a sales spread. So we had 2,633 sales, but then we had done some data cleansing, removing basically everything that was not an iPhone 6, 16 gigabytes from this relation, and we end up with 1,729. Some sellers actually list an item that is not an iPhone 6 in the iPhone category to try to sell it. For example, they say sell accessories or Android phones. They do this on purpose. So that's why we had almost, 800 units that sales that we removed from the numbers. Then, in general, prices on Mercado Livre were slightly below traditional retail pricing. iPhone 6 is not on Apple anymore, so it's hard to compare. We don't have an official price, but we have some big stores like Submarino or Americanos that sell this same model, so we could compare with the price that they have on their websites. The distribution is slightly skewed negatively, most because of used phones being merged with the total number of sold items. Then from this total of items, 614, we had 614 listings that resulted in 1,700 items, so it's average 2.8 sale per listing. And then there were 480 listings that just sold 1 unit. What it means that some listings sold a lot of units, other listings were just for one specific unit. We see the same behavior for sellers. So we have some sellers that sold just 1 unit, and a few sellers with lots of units. One seller sold over 100 units. This reinforced the idea that we have some very small sellers competing with large, huge companies in the same place. So from the data we collected, and based on our model, we went to a linear regression. These variables over here are related to the seller, then for the product, and for the listing, and then for the product. I'm not getting to read all the data, but we're gonna move to the results. So we went to validating the hypothesis that we had in the beginning. So selling reputation has proven to be a factor influencing premium pricing, validating the first hypothesis. A seller with a green thermometer, sales from that seller had a value 125 reais above sellers without that green thermometer. One interesting result here is that if a seller doesn't have any thermometer, he was having better results than sellers with red and yellow, showing that somehow the buyers prefer to buy with someone that they still don't know how will. Just coming that. If a seller is a new seller, he doesn't have any thermometer. After some sales, he gets a thermometer that can go from red to green. It's better to be a new seller than to have a bad reputation on the platform. This result is in line with some studies conducted in the past internationally. Then for our second hypothesis is related to size. We saw that this is in fact true. The bigger the seller, the higher the prices if we talk about revenue. But if we see for number of transactions, this is not true. It's actually the opposite. This actually makes sense because some sellers decided to sell it below average market price just to have a high volume of sales. So hypothesis number 2 is partially confirmed. Hypothesis number 3 is about localization, and this was confirmed. Sellers in state capitals had a different pricing strategy than sellers on smaller cities. Hypothesis number 4 was regarding multimedia resources, and this is not true. We were expecting that if a listing has photos and videos, would be seen as a listing with better quality and hence be able to sell at higher prices. But this was not true. When a listing has lots of photos and videos, in fact, they sell by lower prices. A possible reason for that is that since the item an iPhone is very homogeneous. The buyer knows what he's buying. If a seller needed to provide pictures and photos, it's because he's highlighting some specific issue or something like that. So this was not confirmed. In the broader study that we are doing, we are analyzing different items, and we may see a different behavior for different items. Listing characteristics related to sales. This was true. A seller that states in the listing that they will ship the item with nota fiscal was able to sell it by a higher value. The same for extra warranty. There is a section in the listing just for specifying the warranty. We went ahead to read this using also a script. Website still on the listing characteristics. Shipping was also confirmed, and the same for exposure regarding the level of the paid exposure. For history, old listings get updated over time, so sellers may try different contents and formats until they find one that works better, and that's why we were expecting older listings to have higher prices. And also we saw that sometimes the seller advertised the URL in other places and get some reputation outside the platform. So for example, there was one seller that was mentioned in some forums, online forums, discussing, especially for other products. Discussion in that case was for PlayStation 4. He got famous in a gaming forum online as a good seller, and everybody was mentioning his URL for his listing. So this was confirmed. Older listings get higher prices when they are selling. And then for product, we just saw at the condition, and the condition was indeed a factor for differentiation. And concluding the limitations we had and the future works we see, we collected data just once a day. So if two events happened in the same day, we missed something. For example, if someone advertised at noon and sell the item at 3 p.m., we actually lost this because we just grabbed the data in the beginning and then we grabbed the data again in the following day. We don't get anything that started and finished at the same day. Another limitation that we had is that if two events happen at the same day, we don't know which one occurred before the other. So if we see that in the beginning of the day the price was 1,000 and there were two sales, and then in the following day the price was 500 and the number of cumulative sales was 3, we knew that one unit was sold, but it was not sure if it was sold by 1,000 or by 500. Some characteristics we could infer by doing some logic. For example, the number of cumulative sales. If 5 sales occur in the same day, we say, oh, one sale occurred when it was 0 sales, the other one was 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. But some specifics, like this pricing example, we couldn't get the detail of it. The way we could improve this was doing more collections. Instead of doing just once a day, we could do like 20 a day, for example, or every hour. And 2 ways we see for future works. One is comparing different products. So we mainly work with iPhone. We could see how different products behave, what's the behavior for different products. If you see, for example, handmade shirts, probably they have a different behavior than iPhones. So this is something that we could explore better. And also, future researchers could explore the factors that are making the listing not successful. We collected thousands of listings and just a few hundreds had actually sold any unit. What was the reason that thousands of listings couldn't sell any unit? What we are looking for the successful ones, but we also think that it's possible to explore and research about the ones that weren't successful. And that's all I have. Very open to questions.
Okay, open to questions.
So, actually, we started researching based on the previous researchers, and they had a bunch of different approaches. And mainly, we want to just understand the factors. So we are not actually focused on just one specific theory. We are mostly collecting different papers and seeing the factors and how they connect with each other.
Okay. Can I suggest from the point of view of publication
Mhm.
that you really need to have a strong theoretical basis? Because you need to contribute, to very clearly articulate your contribution to theory.
Mhm.
If you don't do that, it's just an empirical work, and we could always say, why is this done by an academic researcher and not by someone in the market, for example?
So the point is to help you with that, if you think about it, it can be classified as fact finding and so what research, right? So go to your model and have a look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, it will be better.
You miss the signal.
So you have seller characteristics, and you're saying premium price, right? So I'm very sure if you look into economics, if you look into maybe marketing, I would say, I don't know if you know any.
Relationship
But,
market.
yeah, but definitely in economics, they would have, especially people that look at literature in stock trading, things like that. There will be something saying what influences pricing. And if it's not, I pay your beer. So you've got to have something like that that be able to actually sustain some of those issues. Even in e-commerce, there are, because the other thing you have to be very careful in terms of publication is that you talk about a Brazilian case, and when you're trying to do replication research, it has a certain value. I'm not saying the replication research is bad, but it's harder to get it out. On the other hand, if you have something that that is specific, so when you're looking at it, you're saying, I'm using a case of Brazil. One of the jokes I did in class, Alexandre may remember, I say, if there's no construct called Zirigudum Balakubak Telekotek, right? It's not necessarily you're looking at the theorization of the Brazilian case, but the instantiation of the Brazilian case. You know what I mean? It's like if we take the same research and I do it in England, right? Those factors should, because there's nothing there essentially.
It's just a different object, not a different objective or
correct.
Whatever. Yeah.
So that's something that I always find. When people are looking, it doesn't matter whether it's Brazil or New Zealand or U.S. or Guinea-Bissau. I mean, but it's try to look at the theorization and the instantiation as a difference to that, because otherwise, it's actually much better because it's something that can be. But be careful to not fall into the replication because you're trying to develop a model, right? And your model, the context of your model, is not necessarily in your model. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are things I think could be actually, but definitely look at finance literature and economics. It should have something that can actually help you to build an underlying literature and then applying to e-commerce.
I completely agree. Just adding 2 points on this.
Sure.
That most of the studies here, especially the older ones, just
Yeah.
focus on one specific characteristics. For
Okay.
example, how does reputation affects pricing? And then we started merging together those different characteristics. And the most recent ones, I'm not sure if one have here, don't see, I actually just listed the old ones. But there are some recent ones that actually start measuring together. Instead of analyzing just one factor, start analyzing multiple factors. And that's also maybe that helping in constructing this model.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't have a specific theory behind, at least not usually when I read these papers. But maybe we can use it to reinforce why.
But, I'm very sure there is theories that says that the more trust you have, and say if I'm going to buy from a store that I have no peer value, I mean those factors there, I'm very sure that there got to be some theories in pricing that of risk adversity and things like that would. So there is a thing between a underlying theory, like for example, if you're doing an adoption study. and you do an adoption study, and your underlying theory is not necessarily to technology adoption theory, is actually, TPD or TRA. That is basically, you're looking at reasonable action and planned behavior. So you have an underlying theory that's not necessarily the actual applied theory, right? So that, I think that's the point you're trying to bring, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You said that you used Mercado Livre API to collect the data. Is it open? So
Is it open to?
anyone can use to collect data?
Yes, but to public available data. For example, all the data that you see, for example, the seller name, seller number of sold units, price, and those kind of things.
But do they restrict, the throughput? So if you're, let's suppose I want to collect public data of 10,000 announcements or advertising or whatever the listings. Some places have API because it costs you then like throughput and machine. They restrict you, so they don't.
And besides, they're the owners of the data. They want to use it for themselves. They give you a little bit, but not necessarily much.
Yeah, it's in the very beginning, Mercado Livre used it to invest a lot on, Google AdWords, advertisement, and they created these APIs to make it easier for websites to use Mercado Livre data to feel like a catalog, for example. So they created this, and this is free. They don't limit it.
Yeah, I understand now why. Because they probably most of the usage is probably to make money on that or help people to manage their listings,
Yes.
and that's it. So it makes sense.
Marco, I'm curious about something, and more the practical side. I totally agree that we have to think of our research and think of models and theory before we go to the practical side of it, so that we are not just marketing people, Otherwise, there's not much contribution from. I mean, there's definitely contribution. We're all wanting to understand what's happening there, but it's very practical. And we're here to generate theory. But at going back to the practical side, I remember that once I was buying an apartment and I was talking to a realtor that was a friend of mine, and he said, "Be aware that many times what we do is if we have an apartment to sell in an apartment building, we will advertise another one with a fake number for $50,000 more expensive. Nobody's going to look at that one because the other one is cheaper, but the cheaper one is the one that we actually want to sell." So I wonder if you could detect there any situations in which the seller wants to sell for a price but places other ads at different prices, higher prices, so that people think that that's a bargain. I don't know if that's something that could be detected there, but I was curious about it.
We didn't look at this, but we have the data that we could look at this. Like we have thousands of ads that didn't sell any unit, and we don't know why. And that's maybe one of the possibilities. They're advertising just to inflate the pricing of the market.
But that happens for sure on eBay. I will tell you why. Because I have a collection of old computers, and I used to bid on eBay. I don't have space to put anymore. But the thing is, when there was something somehow rare, and I said I wanted to be sure that okay, and I saw two, and many of times that happened. One was an auction on eBay, and the other one was just
sitting there,
high
yeah.
price. And I said, wait a minute, it looks like the same picture of the same, and I start to do both. Sometimes I get both. One of those are canceled. Transactions canceled. So I get on the auction for $100, and the other one, the price was $300. The guy canceled. It's different name, it's different user, but for sure it's the same. So probably, I don't know Mercado Livre that much, but people probably are doing this.
Yeah, and when you said this, just remind me of something that makes this work done in Brazil different than if it was done in another country. Is that Mercado Livre is mainly buy it now. It doesn't have. It doesn't have it, but nobody uses it. And I actually took away all the actions. It was just the buy it now actions. And most of the studies, if not all, also consider the action because the action is very famous.
I was trying to say that the people, the
Yeah,
guys
I see.
they create mechanisms to tweak the perception. I'm quite sure that, especially considering the market in Brazil, that they are probably putting a lot of
Brazilian sellers, right?
yes,
would think
Brazilian
of that.
like put like a lot of different prices to influence you. But that's a good point. That maybe if you can find a way, it's another. I think that probably if you do this, if you have the interest, will make even better, because it's really interesting study and it will be even something that probably no one has done. That's really cool.